Okay, great. Hi, Paula, and thank you so much for joining me today to discuss a little bit about your journey inside technology world and also your whole career trajectory across multiple continents, as well as from going from NASA to Tesla to the world of autonomous vehicles.
Thank you, Swati. I'm very excited to, share it's been a journey. It's not a
It
destination,
is.
it's a journey.
Yeah.
So I definitely love to share it with people. And I always thought about being an example to others, right? Inspiring others to pursue their dreams. And even as crazy as it might seem, you
Yeah,
definitely have a chance.
absolutely.
So
That's the
thank you for
reason
having
I
me.
wanted to have you, first of all. So tell me a little bit about how you started off in the world of technology and how did you land
Yeah,
up in NASA?
So currently I'm a technology scout at the Innovation Lab in Goodyear Labs. We work on electric vehicles and autonomous vehicles, proofs of concept as well as investments or co-developing concepts. But like thinking back maybe 20 years ago, that was probably not what I wanted to do. I am originally born and raised in Colombia, in Bogota, and my parents, the typical story, right? We migrated here for better opportunities, and I've always wanted to be an astronaut when I was young. So
Wow, lofty goal.
I know, right? It was like, oh, what's the hardest thing I could study? So I went to school here for aerospace engineering in Florida. And it was very close to NASA, to the Kennedy Space Center. And that's one of the reasons I decided to go there to
Mhm.
study at UCF. And I got a co-op at that point working in reliability engineering for the space shuttle. And it was really, really cool. And I loved it. Like I loved space technology. I loved being an engineer. I thought that was what I was gonna do my whole life. And
Mhm.
then as you go through life, you realize you have other goals that you want to
Mhm.
accomplish, and you change as a person. And that's what happened to me. Every time that I achieve something, I'm like, okay, I've done this. What happens next? So I've always been a little more like constantly growing and changing. I think that's my main motivation throughout like the constant theme. So then when I moved actually to the Netherlands to work for the European Space Agency, and then I fell into energy, working oil and gas and working in drilling rigs and taking helicopters to middle nowhere for weeks at a time. And
Wow.
that was like,
That
it
is
was all.
quite a trajectory. So I want to dwell a little bit about, yes, you moved across sectors from space to energy, but I also want to talk a little bit about your inner journey, if I may. So,
Yeah,
so,
okay.
so talk to me a little bit about were you intimidated or were you curious about these new sectors? What was your inner journey and what gave you that motivation?
I think I was always very curious about things. Like I'm like, oh, how does the space shuttle work? Let me find out. Or, what do people, if I want to be, working at NASA, how do I need to get there? What is the journey? So I always kind of ask people, research, and I've always felt like education has helped me so much. Like, going to school and learning principles, and it's opened so many doors for me. And towards the end of my career is more the networking part, but we can talk about that. Of course, as a girl, it was always a little intimidating seeing like the boys at the class and all my calculus and physics classes, obviously, and you really have to stand your ground, and working in drilling rigs with men that they didn't even speak English, for instance, and it's just like a very male dominated environment. And the technical aspect is right, engineering. I study mechanical engineering, and you see it now in Silicon Valley as well with software engineering. But it was I think like what gave me that inspiration and kind of energy to go forward is always being persistent in my goals. And once you accomplish one goal, like, okay, I'm going to work at NASA. And I did. And I'm like, okay, if I could work at NASA, I could do almost anything else I want to. So then it was a matter of just like that, kind of like achieving a small step that would give you the confidence and the hope that the next thing or the next dream that you have would be accomplished if you persevere enough. So
That's awesome. So how did you go then from working in energy sector to Tesla.
Yeah, so I was there. I'm also an avid traveler, so I've always wanted to live overseas. And I lived in Colombia. I moved here for school, and then I moved back to Europe. But at one point, I wanted to go back to the US, and I was at a point where I wanted to work in innovation, and I want to work in a mission driven career, rather than just like oil and gas, but something that I felt proud to be in, and I felt like somehow indirectly I was doing something good for the world. My legacy was positive. So I started to kind of do like an inner reflection, self-reflection, what I wanted. And at that point, I had no idea what I wanted. So then I thought business school was a route, not the only route. First, it would expose me to many different, industries, financial, business, insurance, whatever, and you'll be exposed to other people, as well as it will give me the time to think what I wanted. So yeah, I applied for business school. I went back to study to school. And at that point, I had done my bachelor's in aerospace, my master's in mechanical engineering. So all my family jokes like, "Are you just gonna be in school forever?" But and at the same time, I also eventually want to become an entrepreneur. So that's why I decided to work closely with startups. And after going to school, I graduated from Georgetown. Actually, halfway, I did my internship at Tesla. So I did not expect anything. I was like, oh, I'll stay in the East Coast. I'll figure out what I want to do. And they reach out. And of course, it was Tesla. So I'm like, I couldn't say no. So I came out here and I was like, wow, it's like, imagine the future of transportation where cars are like driven, by batteries. You don't need, and funny enough, ironically, you wouldn't need oil anymore. And then the autopilot and the advanced
I did
features.
notice that you moved directly from oil
I
and
know,
gas
which was the
industry to
point actually at the end
electric.
of the
I
day.
think I think that's an awesome trajectory, right? Because think about Tesla inspiring the Fords and the Chevys and GM to get into
Exactly. Yeah,
electric. Everybody's going
driving
electric,
the innovation
so
and
that's
just seeing like,
amazing.
yeah,
Yeah.
seeing how inspiring people were there, because it was tough and it was hard work, and but people were just driven by the mission, and
Mhm.
just being in Silicon Valley and the atmosphere, like a startup and innovation. And that's how I got even more inspired to write my book on autonomous technology, because I started to notice that there was all these startups working on this amazing technology, but how would we monetize it, right? Make it commercial, make it a sustainable business model. And so with my technical background and the business education, I thought I had a voice and I had something to say. So that's how I became
Awesome.
an
So
author.
talk to me, tell us more about the book. The book is called Autonomousity, Autonomous Vehicles and Emerging Business Models. So tell us more about the book, because it's very interesting, because you focus on the new business models, which obviously impacts economic growth or in every sector possible by second and third degree. So talk to us a
Yeah,
little bit about the
yeah.
book.
So going back to that curiosity, and autonomosity is autonomous with curiosity put together. I don't know, one day
That's
I
a cool
woke up and I thought about
title.
it. And again, I was curious about the technology. I also wanted to get into, so this is a big point for people who want to pursue a specific career. Just get completely immersed in the topic. So I started running meetups for autonomy. I
Mhm.
ran this Still Driving 101 meetup, which we have like 2,000 attendees, and I would meet founders and people from OEMs and tier ones, people really involved in the sector. That was
Mhm.
like my second driver for doing it, and third, I wanted to gain credibility in the industry, right? So it's like people get impressed because I have a book on autonomous vehicles, so they say, okay, she knows what she's talking about, and I come from a very different background. I was doing space, I was doing energy. I was never, I was never MIT, or I was never in Carnegie Mellon, doing the DARPA challenge. But I was just so like thirsty for knowledge. I would read everything. I would attend a lot of meetups. I would always try to educate myself about it. So it just becomes second nature that you just I just knew like the industry players, and that's how I started to write the book, and I interviewed like, I don't know, 50 people, and then I started to create my own thesis around business models in terms of like what the manufacturers were thinking, what the startups were thinking, where was the industry today, where it was going to go. And I did parallels with the aviation industry because my background is in aerospace. So I brought that along as well. So I felt like I was able to tie in all these different pieces of information and experiences that I had. And people are very supportive. If people feel like you have passion, I think that's another huge element that no matter if you look very different from the rest of the people of the room, like if you're
I
persistent,
agree.
you
I
have
agree. I
passion,
think I
yeah,
totally bring your whole self and your enthusiasm,
yeah,
and
where
you
they're
will
just
be
not gonna,
supported.
they're just
Yeah,
not gonna
although
get rid of you. You're gonna be
yeah,
there. You're
exactly. Be
yeah,
persistent that people can't get. Although I'm more on the conservative side of the country, just outside Washington, D.C., that's been my experience as a woman in technology. You be persistent, you show up, and you show
yeah,
your curiosity and your knowledge,
exactly.
and people have
And
to
yeah,
acknowledge
always,
you at some point.
yeah, and always have a positive prospect on things, and try to don't bring just problems but bring solutions. And
Right.
I think as a woman you're also memorable. If there are like 50 guys in a room and there's one female there, who are they gonna remember? It's gonna be the girl that, and I used to wear like bright pink dresses to work with just because I
Right. Bring out the
wanted to be
I
remembered.
call it the lipstick and the stiletto brigade in STEM, because
Yeah,
also I
exactly.
think not just showing up but also showing your knowledge, what value you brought to the
Yeah.
table.
And I encountered today at work people, about women that are a bit introverted and quiet, and I have to coach them and be like, just just put yourself out there. Nobody
Have
has
to
the
speak
right.
up. Yeah.
You have to speak up, and even if it's the wrong thing, just get in the habit of speaking up, because people are not gonna know your ideas, or that your
Mhm, mhm.
leadership skills, or that you have creative ways to solve problems if they
Right.
don't hear you. And people also like to work with people that they like, and they can relate to, and they can have a relationship. And that's another thing. When I came to Silicon Valley, is also relationship driven, right? So that's another piece about, making it to the career that you want. If you're in your mid stage or you're just starting, the network piece, I just can't tell you, like, I've got new customers coming to our lab just because of personal relationships. And they don't have to be fake, right? You could be authentic, and if you're passionate about a subject and that other person's, then you will automatically click. So
Click.
that
Yeah.
helped me with my book, and that's helped me thus far in my career as well. So that's another advice I would give to other women.
That's a good advice. I think too often we underestimate bringing our whole self to the table.
Yeah,
Previously, I never used to speak about, like, I'm a mother of a 4 year old, I'm doing all this, juggling all these things. But once you start talking about your authentic self, more people can relate to you. And I think
exactly. They
that's
open up.
great emphasis on the power of networking. Relate to people, whether it's the subject you're bringing you can talk about, or just in general a sport you enjoy, but important to start talking and putting yourself out there.
Yeah, definitely. I would say that, and just find sources where you can, if you want to go into data science, start reading journals on data science, or join a
Exactly.
meetup in data science, or yeah, get in a course, a boot camp. Just start speaking that language, because
Mm-hmm.
a lot of people may have the university and the degrees, but then if they don't have the network or they can't express themselves, it's also an impediment, right? It's a barrier. In the thing about artificial intelligence or autonomous vehicles is because it's such a nascent and early stage industry, that many of the experts come from other industries. They come from I don't know, automotive, like, manufacturing,
Healthcare, finance,
Detroit, or
yeah.
aviation, right? So I don't think there is a one perfect background that you should have. You should definitely just educate yourself proactively, I would say. I think that's the main message.
Amazing. And to end this whole conversation, what advice do you give to young girls who haven't yet chosen a path of technology and they're intimidated by STEM, because there's a whole
Yeah,
culture in the United
definitely.
States around it. So want to demystify that for young girls
That's
who
a
are
good
joining.
point. I've
Yeah.
always, I think for me it was like, oh, I want to be an engineer, I want to be an astronaut. How do I get there? You know, I was so
Mhm.
excited about the universe and the planets and just like how machines worked. And I think my parents were very open about me trying whatever. So, but that's kind of out of your control. But I would say just be curious, just be learning things. So right now during COVID, I've been learning so much about other types, you know, like finance and real estate investment and other like accounting and just be curious and read a lot or just research things that you want to learn about or you want to be and maybe having a role model like oh that person's job looks cool, you know, how did they get there? And now with LinkedIn, you know, you can almost find anyone in any kind of role that you want, just by searching the internet, right? And just having like that kind of drive to do it and being persistent. And then also don't be intimidated by like numbers, you know, like a lot of people get so scared about math and science and just go through it. I mean, a lot of people, I remember I used to go to school and I'm like, how did that person get into the world? You know, like not everybody's super smart, their IQs are not super high, and you just gotta get through it. And people struggle, everybody has their struggles, but you just have to persevere and have a lot of grit. I think that
Mhm.
was, you know, be scrappy and have grit and rather than any kind of like super smart person that you have, the person who shows up every day, um, I think that's something that if you carry on through from your young age to like, you know, later if in your career, it will make a difference. And as a woman, I feel like we're always so like in the back of our heads are always like, oh, you know, I'm a woman, I'm different. Like, don't think about black and white, female, male. Just be a little less discerning and
Mhm.
just think you're a person that brings something valuable to the table. And of course you're going to run into people who may not believe in you or who may speak, you know, over you or be more authoritative, but you just kind of move on and you just keep going at it and eventually you'll succeed. I feel I truly from the bottom of my head think like that's how you should think of in like just look, yeah, like think about and also start with the end goal in mind as well. I mean, you can't predict what you want to be in 20 years, but like what are your 2 3 year goals, right? And
Mhm.
work towards that. It's like a little bit of little baby steps at a time, and then time goes by so fast. So I
It
think if
does.
you do that in the short run, it will in the long term it will show up. So always have that, and that helps you survive like throughout the really tough times. Like you always have that kind of like inspiration that one day you'll reach your goal basically.
Awesome. So following your curiosity and networking and showing the perseverance and all the good stuff. So amazing, Paula. So do you want to talk a little bit about what you're currently working on at
Yes,
the
yeah,
Goodyear
I'm
Innovation
yeah,
Lab?
definitely. It's funny because yeah, it's such an interesting because the job I had, I would have never thought, oh, that's exactly the job I want, right? But it draws from like my engineering background, business background, like my passion for autonomous technology. So like I mentioned in the introduction, I do tech scouting for Goodyear. So, you know, Goodyear, like many of the tier ones and OEMs, they've realized that just building hardware for, you know, in 100-year-old industry is just not going to be sustainable in the next 30 years because we're moving towards a software driven kind of
Mm-hmm.
vehicle, and
Mm-hmm.
then also we're trying to be more sustainable. People are getting rid of their vehicles as well. So how do these companies stay up to date with the next generation of transportation? So a lot of these companies deploy an agile team in Silicon Valley to have a close eye and ear to the startups, the innovation that's happening here, right? So if you think like General Motors, you know, came up
Yeah.
here, they have an innovation lab, and they acquire Cruise, which is autonomous vehicle company. And you see the Cruise cars around here. I don't know if everybody's familiar. So it's that kind of model where you try to identify those key technologies and startups, and we make tires, right? Everybody's like, but you make tires, how does that, I mean, tires haven't changed, but the way the tire kind of interacts with the vehicle, right? And besides tires, what else could we do as servicing the vehicle, right? Like in more in like a predictive analytics, more in like an on-demand digital world. Like where do we fit in, right? You would never think there's like a team a building full of data scientists in Goodyear.
Because
But
there's
yeah, that's
always
how.
impact, right? Second degree impact.
Yeah,
If a
exactly.
car
And
changes, whether the tire
the
changes or
consumer
not,
changes,
there will be
expectations
impact if the
change.
shape of the cars, body of the cars change. So,
Yeah, exactly. And you don't know, or some people may know, but the tires are like the second biggest consumption or expense for a vehicle or for a fleet after fuel. So you're really it's you're really spending a lot of money in tires. So if there's a way that you can save yourself 10%, that could equate to millions of dollars, right? For a company that rents vehicles, trucks, or commercial or passenger light duty vehicles. But so I'm on like at the intersection of all these different technologies. Like we look at micromobility, we look at predictive platforms, we also look at obviously electrification, and I try to identify, okay, what kind of projects, what kind of technologies do we want to focus on? What startups are working in that space? It could be like early stage, later stage, and then how do we do a proof of concept with them? So we set up some kind of like, yeah, like experimentation to prove or disprove a theory, a thesis, and then we try to create concepts together. And it's really cool because I've talked in my job, I talk to so many of these autonomous vehicle companies because we want to learn what they're doing and how do we apply our current technology to what they're doing, and either we could co-develop something or become, or they could become our customers, for instance, right? And we learn from each other. It's like a knowledge transfer. So I'm also like traveling, like this week I was traveling to an autonomous vehicle company, and we got to see the technology working, and it was just really cool. Like I would have never expected that I could actually do that coming from the background that I have. And I'm not a coder. Like I don't program, I don't know Python. I work with people that do it, are really bright, but it was never something I wanted. And I feel like obviously there is this preconception that if you're not a software engineer, you can't get into autonomous vehicles, right? Or like artificial intelligence. But there's so many other areas that need to sustain the engineering. Like you have business development, you have operations, you have governance, and I feel
product
like,
management.
yeah, exactly, product management,
That's
project
one of the
management.
myths I always tell, especially mid-career women. They always think they have to start coding, write software programs, but
No,
the whole
not
tech
at all.
industry needs all of the
Yeah,
exploratory
exactly. And I feel, yeah,
roles.
yeah.
So
And
think
they
about
usually,
product management, think about business development, marketing, what have you.
exactly. And in the thing, the caveat is that technical people are really good at doing technical, projects and speaking ones and zeros. But when it comes to communicating that to somebody who's not into technical, or selling that idea, then they really need the help from people who are, more in like the project management and business. I think in general, yeah, of course, if you're a software developer, it's probably easier. I think for the earlier stage career women, for instance, I would definitely advise them. Definitely
Mhm.
never hurts to know how to code. But if you have more the mid stage people, like I was maybe 10 years into my career after I decided to switch. That there are other ways to do it, and if you take those skills from the previous jobs that you've done to apply them, how do they transfer to what I'm doing today? I think it would help, because I feel like now, like my experience in energy, obviously working at Tesla, my like I even also internship at a venture capital firm, and I also support our corporate venture capital fund today. So all these little skills or things, is they're helping me today. And you could either choose to be like an expert on one thing, like this is all what I want to do and focus on one vertical in one type of industry, or you could be a generalist, right? Like you could be like a project manager across different industries, across verticals, and each path has advantages and disadvantages. I chose to be more a generalist, I feel, because I'm very curious about different things, and that also, you know, that has drawbacks as well. Remember, I struggle recruiting sometimes because HR or this hiring recruitment agencies, they want to see like one thing sometimes, and
Right,
in
right.
trying to like sell yourself, that's where the networking comes along, right? And making sure your resume is tailored to a specific job that you want. But at the end of the day, it's like what you really want, and you know what's gonna make you happy, and trying not to compromise, or you know,
No,
always
I
trying to
get
have that
that.
kind of like plan B. Like I'm working on this, but I really want this, and I'm working towards that. So people don't have to choose like, oh, I need a job or I want to be happy. Like you can have both. You just have to
Yeah,
plan it
absolutely.
and
I
you know
totally
take a level
agree.
of it. So
I totally
yeah.
agree.
Oh
And
my God.
speaking about, I think there is a place for specialities or specific verticals, but I think I'm a generalist too across verticals and across sectors. And I look at Elon Musk, right? He is doing Neuralink, which is to do with
Yeah.
brains, to
Oh my gosh.
space, to
Everything and
cars, to
anything.
boring. Okay. So these are so many industry sectors that he doesn't have expertise even on a single sector, but I think having that vision and the drive is what's really essential to
Yeah.
go after.
Yeah, and the autonomous vehicle industry is like a kaleidoscope. You have, you know, people that are in general counsel and they come from like DC and they work in like completely like
It has
e-commerce.
impact to policy. Yeah,
Yeah, definitely. But exactly, they have that knowledge of how policy works, and I think it's just knowing that you're competent at your job and then that you will deliver results. I think that's sometimes more important than, oh, you know, you work 30 years in the automotive industry.
correct.
I think, and also in terms of the speed of innovation and development, it's just such a different pace, you know, like a software driven pace versus like more the hardware automotive, like you think German automotive, like 5 to 10 year cycle. So you also have that mindset of like agility and be, and that I struggle with that because I came from, you know, NASA, oil and gas, so very structured and very conservative industries, and you come to Silicon Valley and things are like, oh, we have to change, we
Moving
have to
very
change.
fast.
So yeah,
Hmm.
the way that you know, getting that agile mentality over more of like a waterfall project
Hmm.
management, that's something that I had to pick up on the spot. And you, I mean, you just do it if you have, you know, you have the capacity to do it. But getting into that mental model, I also advise women, career wise, that that maybe read about it. You know, what is agile, what is a sprint, how do you know how do software engineering companies develop, because when you're in an
Deliver.
interview and you're able to speak of these terms of
Hmm.
being agile, running sprints, then the recruiter will be able to connect with you and they'll be like, oh, that's a word, you know, like she said that word, like the
They
buzzword they call them.
so that's the thing I say, that you don't need to code, but learn about what the process is,
Yeah,
because if you're in a
everything around
technology
it,
company, you just have to learn the process. So that's
like
helpful.
the lingo. And that's how I got
Yeah,
into
lingo and
autonomous
the
technology
process.
as
Yeah.
well, because, you know, I don't know how to make a deep neural network, but I know what it is and what it's
What it
for,
is. Yeah.
and the technology stack between a prediction layer and a planning layer,
Hmm.
and you know, and all the technology stacks that are in a in an autonomous technology software. And the same with the
Hmm.
perception stack, like all the lidars and the radars. Like I couldn't design a radar or lidar myself, but you know, I have so many friends that work in lidar companies. I can tell you like all the different manufacturers that they are. And just that is actually knowledge that you're building. So when you go up to a recruiter or a hiring manager, they will be like, I feel like they'll be happy to see that you are so knowledgeable in a specific industry. So
In the know. Okay. Thank you so much, Paula. This was like a treasure trove of information. So,
I know.
last advice to any woman who is stalling in her career and wants to get just in 30 seconds to wrap it around.
Um, yeah, so I'm reading this book about how to make friends and influence people. I can't remember the guy's name, but it's a
Dale
yeah.
Carnegie.
Oh my God, it's such a like old school book, and
It
he's
is
got like
old school, but it is
five
treasure.
tenants, and it's very relevant. And when he says he's like, people have to like you in order
Yep,
to connect.
Dale
And I'm not
Carnegie
saying
all
be
the way.
fake. Yeah, don't be like, don't kiss people's behinds, but like try to be amicable and fun, and don't feel like you have to be like, because you're a woman and you have to be taken
Right,
seriously.
exactly. Hmm.
Just have fun as well. I think that speaks highly of your passion as well. So that's my last thought of advice, my last piece
Awesome.
of
I love
advice.
it. Have fun, but go after what you want.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Wonderful. Thank you so much, Paula, for your time today, and good luck in all your endeavors.
All right, thank you, Swati. This is great. And if you want to share my LinkedIn or whatever, I'll
Will
be more
do.
than
We'll share
happy,
your LinkedIn for
to
sure. Yeah.
talk to more people.
And
So
your book, your
yeah,
amazing book.
definitely. Please.
Okay.
Thanks. Bye bye.
Thanks. Have a good one. Bye bye.